Good morning, afternoon, and evening to you wherever you are in the world. Look, every single day, the world just bombards us with headlines, right? A political spat here, a trade deal there, some bizarre scientific discovery somewhere else. And it's so easy to feel like you're just watching this random jumble of disconnected events. But what if they're not so different? What if they're all part of the same giant hidden story? Well, today, we're going to pull on the threads that connect them all, from high-stakes diplomacy all the way down to talking corn. Yep, you heard me right. Let's start connecting some dots.
It sounds like the setup for a really weird joke, doesn't it? But the answer, it's not a punchline, it is the key to understanding just how interconnected our world really is. I mean, these three things feel like they belong on different planets. One is for scientists in a lab, another's for economists in a boardroom, and the third is for aid workers on the ground. But they are all signals, believe it or not, echoing through this incredibly complex global system. They're proof that an event in one place can have ripple effects that touch us all. The world is constantly talking to us, and our job today is to try and learn its language.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the human fault lines. That's where tensions are most obvious. Then, we'll move to the economic chessboard to see how money and trade are used as power plays. After that, we'll listen to the planet's reply, exploring the very real consequences of our actions. And we'll finish up with the surprising signals, those wild, unexpected connections you just never see coming.
Okay, let's dive in. We're going to start where the connections are easiest to see. But man, are they often the hardest to resolve. We're talking about the interactions between leaders, between nations. Think of the globe like it's made of tectonic plates. Well, these are the political fault lines where the pressure builds and builds, sometimes causing little tremors, and sometimes full-blown earthquakes that reshape the world map.
And boom, right away, we see a deep crack running right through the foundation of European unity. On one side, you've got France's President Macron floating a pretty radical idea. He's thinking about the future, a post-war Ukraine, and how Europe might step up to guarantee its security. It's a bold vision, right? Europe taking charge. And then the reaction from Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini. It's not a polite disagreement, it's openly disparaging. This isn't just a policy debate, folks. This is a clash of worldviews on the same continent. It shows that even on the most critical issue they face, Europe is deeply, fundamentally divided on what its role in the world should even be.
And you know, these fault lines don't just exist between nations, they run right through them. Syria is getting ready for what should be a huge moment, a chance to finally turn the page after years of horrific civil war. But you gotta read the fine print. 3 entire regions are being completely left out of the election. The official reason is security concerns, which is basically code for we don't fully control these areas. But whatever the reason, the result is the same. Millions of people are being shut out from day one. How can you build a new, unified nation when you're telling a huge chunk of your population that their voices simply don't matter? You can't. You end up with a government built on a fractured foundation, its legitimacy in question before it even starts.
Language is a weapon, and wow, this is a masterclass in how to use it. You have an international body, the IPC, they're the global authority on this stuff, and they declare a famine based on data. It's a technical conclusion. The response from the Israeli Prime Minister's office? To call it a modern blood libel. Now that phrase is incredibly charged. It's deliberately invoking a horrific anti-Semitic lie from centuries ago. By using that term, they're not arguing the facts on the ground. They're trying to completely reframe the conversation. They're accusing the organization itself of being driven by hateful prejudice. It's a classic strategy. If you can't fight the message, you destroy the messenger. The goal is to shift the world's attention away from the humanitarian crisis and onto a debate about the motives of the people who reported it.
For a long time, the story of the war in Ukraine was framed as a pretty simple contest, the West versus Russia. But the world is a lot more complicated now, and this move shows Ukraine gets that. President Zelensky is appealing directly to leaders in the global South, countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. He knows that real global influence now lies way beyond the traditional power centers. These nations have stayed largely neutral, and Zelensky's appeal is a smart strategic recognition that the keys to a lasting peace might not be in Washington or Brussels anymore. They might be in New Delhi or Brasilia. It's him acknowledging that the global chessboard has a lot more powerful players on it than it used to.
All right, time to decode a message, because military actions are absolutely a form of communication. You see the headline, North Korea tests missiles. And that sounds scary, right? But the details here are everything. The key is that these were air defense missiles. Their job is to shoot things down. They are not ICBMs designed to hit a city thousands of miles away. So when this test happens during joint US-South Korea military exercises, it's sending a very specific, very carefully measured signal. The message is, your drills are a threat to us, and we are ready to defend ourselves. It's a show of strength, sure,
but it stops just short of a major escalation. He's flexing, but he's flexing a shield, not a sword.
And to wrap up this section, we see a fault line that's been grinding away for more than a decade now. An airstrike against Boko Haram in Nigeria isn't just a one-off event. It's a little snapshot of a long, brutal, grinding conflict. It tells us about the Nigerian military strategy. Relying on air power lets them hit targets over vast, difficult terrain. But it's a strategy with huge risks. This isn't a war with clear front lines. The insurgents are embedded in local communities, which makes the line between civilian and combatant tragically, dangerously blurry. This one headline gives us a glimpse into the grim mechanics of a forever war.
Okay, so we've seen the direct clashes. Now let's pull the camera back a bit to see the next layer of connection. This isn't a battlefield with soldiers. Think of it more like a global chessboard where each country is a player. And every single move, every trade deal, every tariff is a strategic play for position, for influence, and ultimately for power.
And man, the chessboard is busy. You can see the strategies taking shape right here. Okay, look at Canada playing a brilliant two-front game. On one hand, they're making nice with their giant neighbor, the US, by dropping some tariffs. But at the same time, the Prime Minister is over in Europe, shoring up ties with Germany and Poland. That's a classic hedge. It's like saying we're friends, America, but we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, India and Australia are locking in a huge trade pact. This is about two major democracies in the Indo-Pacific creating their own economic bloc to counterbalance other regional powers. And then, my favorite move on the board, Indonesia. They took the entire European Union to the World Trade Organization, and they won. It's proof that in this game, sometimes a smaller piece can absolutely put a queen in check.
So, what do all these moves on the board actually mean? It means the old, simple map of global trade is being torn up and thrown away. The era where everyone was trying to join one big, happy, globalized system, that's over. What's replacing it is something messier, more complex, and way more strategic. It's a world of competing blocks and shifting loyalties, where who you trade with is just as important as what you trade. That India-Australia deal isn't just a trade agreement, it's a political statement. And Canada's trip to Europe isn't a photo op, it's national security. Every one of these is a piece of a new global puzzle being built right in front of us.
All right, so far we've looked at human systems, how we fight and how we trade. But we're not playing this game in a vacuum, are we? All of this happens on a physical planet, and our actions have consequences. This next section is all about that feedback loop. It's about how our decisions, from government budgets to the tech we use, are getting a direct, powerful, and often devastating reply from the planet itself. This is one of the most direct and honestly heartbreaking connections you can possibly draw. Somewhere in Washington, D.C., a decision is made. A number on a spreadsheet, a foreign aid budget gets cut. It's abstract. But then, half a world away in South Africa, that abstract number becomes brutally real. Clinics that depend on that funding start to shut down. The supply chain for life-saving drugs gets broken. And suddenly, up to 220,000 people, real human beings, face the terrifying possibility of losing access to the medicine that keeps them alive. It's just a stark, brutal reminder of how one policy decision can trigger a life-or-death crisis for hundreds of thousands.
You know, we think of AI and the cloud as this clean, weightless, almost magical thing, don't we? Our data just floats around in some invisible space. Wrong. It has a very real, very heavy, and very thirsty physical footprint. In the French city of Marseille, the boom in data centers, these giant warehouses full of servers, is creating a local crisis. These places need two things in absolutely massive amounts: electricity to run and water to keep from overheating. As you can see, the consumption just dwarfs what normal homes use. This is our futuristic digital world colliding with the planet's most basic resources. The global demand for smarter AI is creating a local fight for the water that comes out of the tap.
Here, the connection is like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. First, a huge global process. The climate changes and Europe gets warmer. It's gradual, but this warming creates a nice new home for a particular species, the tiger mosquito. This insect, once stuck in the tropics, can now survive and thrive further and further north. It marches across the continent. And then the final domino falls. This mosquito is a great carrier for nasty viruses, like West Nile and chikungunya. The result? Record outbreaks of these diseases in places that almost never saw them before. Climate change isn't just some abstract threat. It is literally redrawing the map of human disease.
Now let's go to Malawi, where the planet's reply is a full-blown humanitarian catastrophe. The immediate cause is an El Niño-fueled drought,
But the reason it's so devastating lies in the country's deep vulnerability. An incredible 80% of Malawi's population works in agriculture. For them, the land isn't just a job, it's everything. And when the rains fail, it's not just a bad year. The entire social fabric of the nation starts to tear apart. Savings are gone, livestock die, millions face acute hunger. People are forced to leave their homes just to find water. This is what a systems collapse looks like.
If those last few examples felt urgent, this one is basically the planet's emergency broadcast system going off. A major new study is sending a huge warning from the bottom of the world. Scientists aren't just worried about gradual melting anymore. They're worried about tipping points. Think of it like a glass of water on the edge of a table. You can nudge it, and it's fine. Nudge it again, still fine. But nudge it 1 millimeter too far, and the whole thing tips over, and you can't put the water back in the glass. That's what scientists fear could happen with massive ice sheets in Antarctica. Once they cross a certain line, their collapse could become rapid and irreversible, leading to catastrophic sea level rise for all of us. This is the planet's reply at its absolute loudest.
The planet's reply also forces us into some very tricky and sometimes just plain weird situations. Check out this head-scratcher from Taiwan. They had a vote on reopening a nuclear power plant. A tough choice, right? Clean energy versus nuclear risk. Now look at the results. The yes side won in a landslide. 4.3 million people voted for it, only 1.5 million voted against. So they're reopening the plant, right? Nope, the referendum failed. And here's the paradox. It's because not enough people showed up to vote at all. It didn't meet the legal minimum for participation. So what does that even mean? It's a fascinating example of how the rules of democracy can produce an outcome that a clear majority of the people who actually voted didn't seem to want.
And now for my favorite part. We've seen nations clash, economies shift, and the planet respond. But sometimes the most powerful and honestly hopeful connections come from the most surprising places. These are the signals you weren't looking for, the hidden wiring that shows just how wild and amazing our world can be.
Okay, remember the talking corn from the very beginning? Well, it's real. And it is, I am not kidding you, one of the coolest things I have ever heard. Researchers discovered that when a corn plant gets attacked by a bug, it doesn't just sit there and take it. It releases a chemical signal into the air. It is basically screaming for help. But here's the mind-blowing part. The other corn plants nearby can actually smell it. They pick up on this distress signal, and in response, their own roots start pumping out a natural pesticide into the soil to get ready for the attack they know is coming. This is a networked biological defense system. It's nature's internet. There's a silent, invisible conversation happening in fields all around us. It is absolutely incredible.
For our final story, we have a connection that is just profoundly human and deeply inspiring. High up in the remote Hunza Valley of Pakistan, two sisters started a football league for girls. On the surface, it's just a game, kicking a ball around. But it has become so much more than that. In a very traditional region, that football league has become an engine for social change. Playing on a team gives these girls confidence. The league helps them get scholarships for their education. It gives them a space to be strong and independent. It's just a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest changes don't come from governments. Sometimes something as simple and joyful as a game can be the catalyst that transforms lives and empowers an entire generation.
So we've gone from a diplomatic spat in Europe to a trade dispute won by Indonesia, from the melting ice of Antarctica to a football field in Pakistan, and all the way to a field of talking corn. We've seen how a budget cut in one capital can become a health crisis in another, and how our demand for AI can create a water shortage halfway around the world. The world is not just a collection of random headlines, it is a web of hidden connections. So the real question I want to leave you with is this: now that you know to look for them, what patterns will you see in the news tomorrow?
Our whole goal here is to help you see the patterns connecting the day's events. If you found this useful, follow us on Spotify and YouTube to get a new explainer just like this every morning at 8 a.m. GMT. And if you know someone else who'd appreciate a clearer view of the world, please share this with them. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you tomorrow.